Welcome back to Child Psychology, introduction to week 15. We are moving ahead. Actually, this is our last week of class as we're looking at adolescence this week in terms of the psychosocial development. Um, what is it? What is it that really uh, is a part of adolescence as far as socially and emotionally? And I think this is particularly exciting because we see this week in our reading how all of the stuff we've looked at up to this point, from birth, and in fact from conception and birth all the way through the lifespan, and putting it all together, because as you're going to see, a lot of this psychosocial development is really answer that question of who are you, who am I, who is each of these adolescents, who is that person, who is he or she. And that's a big question to ask, and it often takes years and years and years to come up with an answer. um, and what we'll see is just kind of summarize our discussion from last week. You had to interact with a video about the adolescent brain. I don't think as much of the adolescent brain as the adolescent mind. And so what we see in this adolescent mind is, on the one hand, you have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, completely able to function as an adult. And if you look at back hundreds of years of human history ago, we were considered adults. Once we hit puberty, we were considered adults, and out we went into society to get jobs and have families and all. On the other hand, we see largely still developing the limbic system of the brain, the emotional centers of the brain. And so the question really asks you to think about that, and especially to try to characterize your own adolescence as far as your thinking, your cognition. And what's interesting is, not only do we have sort of the two minds of adolescence, but your responses kind of fall into those two different categories of what is it that really contributes to a person being very logical and adult, thinking like an adult, and what is it that contributes to an adolescent being more susceptible to peer pressure, looking at life um, more in terms of like an emotional reaction to things, or response that something bears more dramatic meaning than really it does. I mean, I'm 54 years old, and I know that a lot of the little stuff that we go through in life probably doesn't really matter that much, as far as it's not that big a deal. So, what is it that contributes to a person favoring that part of the brain versus favoring another? So I noted that both William and Alexis mentioned how you were athletes. Um, Something about playing sports seems to contribute to a greater focus that allows the person to focus more on, or use more of the adult mind, um, logical minds, and maybe that's an increased pressure to perform. Maybe that's increased level of organization, or something like that. Um, I noticed also on the other side, we had, particularly, just mentioned a couple of people, Otelia, what you said about risky behavior. And it really seemed to be that you seem to be saying that the way you looked at things, the way you intuited things, you approached this a very irrational belief, looking forward. So you were talking about relationships, and how many of us enter a romantic relationship, where we think, wow, this is forever. Yeah, and that's irrational, because um, maybe if you're 30 in your 30s, it would be forever because you can characterize like what does forever mean. But when you're 12 or 13, that's harder to do. And so that's what we're talking about. Um, I like what Travis said. Travis Parmley said that this risky behavior that is characterized by adolescence is really a part of growth, and that's true. It is through risky behavior that we understand what is important to us. It's often how we define our personal values is by basically betraying our values. So you can say, well, I did that, and that's not me. I did that, and I wouldn't do that again. See, so we sort of learn morality by being immoral, not just that, but risky behavior is certainly a natural part of growth. In any case, as you turn your attention this week to understanding adolescence and what is it really important to us in adolescence to define ourselves and to find ourselves, then I encourage you to think about that. Think about who you are and what is it. How do you define yourself? What is it that contributes to you defining yourself? And have a great week and take care of yourselves. It's been an honor being your facilitator. I'm looking forward to everything else. It's what you say this week and on your exam, or not in your exam, but your last discussion.